That was abrupt. It was a little bit faster than I was expecting at the end there, but okay, we're good. Welcome
We're
to the
good.
Trippin Thompsons podcast, and
Mhm.
I'm your co-host, one of your co-hosts, Victor.
I'm Brikkelle, the other co-host.
Mm, that's
Mhm.
true.
It is. There's two of us, you and I.
That's what co-hosts usually. Yeah.
It's amazing.
It is amazing, isn't it?
Mhm.
So we're here today with episode 5, and this one's going to be a little different. Actually, they're all a little different, but this one we are going to talk about sports and leadership.
We are. We are. And maybe before we dive into it, we should provide just our own background so that our viewers can get a sense of who we are and how we've been involved in sports over our lifetimes. So, you want to kick it off, Victor?
I was I was a athlete during, all the way through high school, and also played a lot of sports during college, although not for the college, but during college I played with city leagues, things like that, primarily focused on football, baseball, basketball, those three sports. And then, you know, once we had children and they started growing up to play sports, I also started coaching, and I coached basketball and fast pitch. And those are, I stay involved in sports always. I've always been a big sports fan, and it is something that I enjoy, and I love the analogies, which sometimes I know drives some people crazy.
It sure can. Absolutely. My background was sports. I played sports since I think I was 5, and heavily involved in, oh my goodness, uh, fast pitch softball, slow pitch softball in the early years before I was able to join into the fast pitch leagues, and volleyball, basketball, soccer, tennis. I did horseback riding. I did some track and field events through school, and I think that kind of sums it up. We've done some extreme sports like jungle traversing, where you get up on the high ropes and you go from tree to tree, and you're about 100 feet off the ground. And
Yeah.
we've done like the zip line type of things, and kind of fun adventurous sports like that. And yeah, also, we have 4 daughters, and so Victor and I both had the opportunity to get involved in youth sports coaching, and we both have had, um, coaching assignments and opportunities to work with our girls. Like Victor said, fast pitch softball and basketball. I also got to coach them in soccer. I think that's all of them. But anyway, sports has been really informative, I think, in who we are as people and kind of how we approach different things, because there's a lot of analogies that have come through sports and opportunities that we've been able to participate in as far as being athletes, and lessons learned and different ways to look at self. When if you're playing singles tennis, it's all on you, and so how do you navigate through the lessons that sport can teach an individual? I guess golf too could be considered in that space. And then team sports is that, how do you achieve common goals through a collective and united group of individuals? And there's different roles that people play, but it absolutely has shaped a leadership pathway, I would say, for myself, and how I reflect back on those various moments over the number of years, but also I think need to pay tribute to some degree to the fact that some of that formulation of an athlete mindset um, has also shaped how I show up as a leader as well. Victor, how about for you?
Yes, I mean, I think, sports transcends, it kind of, you move from sports into like corporate life, things like that. And what I've found is that there's a lot of applicable things that I've taken from sports and applied when I've gone into the workplace. And, some of the obvious with team sports, teamwork, being able to communicate effectively with other people, but we're going to talk about some other things as well that, transcend or come from sports into the workplace. And the interesting coincidences, or not really coincidence, we don't believe they are, uh, about the fact that so many former athletes end up as leaders in the workplace. So.
Mhm. Yeah, they really do, and in fact, I was reading recently, I came across a statistic that seriously blew me away. So, of all female C-suite executives, 94% of them played competitive sports. That's
Wow.
pretty outstanding.
Yeah.
Um, and if we look at all Fortune 500 CEOs, so irregardless of how you identify, as far as gender, that 50%, or actually it wasn't 50%, it was over half, were college athletes. So, as you said, this isn't a coincidence. This is actually a guided path towards, if people choose to take the greatness and the things that they were conditioned and shaped into being as a competitive athlete, that could absolutely help carry you into pretty high levels of leadership if that's a place you, or position you choose to. And it doesn't have to be at a corporation, it can be at your own company or as an entrepreneur where you can go with these things.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Brikkelle. And I mean, first, let me just say, if you didn't compete competitively, it doesn't mean you can't be a leader, right?
That's right.
Or you can't take on these roles. But I think it's really more about some of the lessons that come across when we look from sports to being leaders in a corporate environment. So, things like discipline and strategy, resilience, these are things that happen in many different aspects of life. But what we find is there's this heavy correlation with sports around just the level of discipline, the level of strategic application you have to have, the level of like bounce back grit and resilience that these leaders have had over time. And that directly translates into their ability to dominate in the corporate world.
Hmm. Yeah. So some of the people that we're talking about that are rather famous and known, are Serena Williams and her championship mindset, Mark Cuban and his relentless hustle, and then also Indra Nooyi, who is very much known for her strategic patience. But more importantly, we really want this to center and focus around you and how you can develop or further advance the same type of winning traits to help you excel in the space that you choose to occupy.
That's terrific. So we're going to break that down now for you a little bit. And there are other things that come from sports, but we're going to focus today on really four things. We talked about, Brikkelle mentioned three people that we're going to talk about, but we're going to kind of cover four different aspects of being an athlete and how those things actually carry over into the workplace. And you brought up Serena Williams. So let's talk about Serena a little bit and what we would call the champions reset.
Yeah. So I I can't imagine anybody that isn't aware of Serena Williams. But just a little context setting, she stepped into a pro ranking at the age of 14 in the sport of tennis. She became a champion at the age of 17. Like that, these are phenomenal achievements. Now, through the years in 2011, she was a ranked number one player in the world, and she had an injury that significantly impacted her ability to actually be able to play. She really needed to attend to her own health. And with that, she went from number one ranking to number 174 in the world. Now, if we think about a mindset of an individual, how defeating that could be for someone. So this happened in 2011. In 2012, she's at the US Open finals. So she made it to the final. And she's gradually clawing her way back to get to that number one ranking in the world, but she's not there yet. And she is down a set and a break. Thinking about this injury that has taken her like out of the sport for considerable amount of time, massively declined her global ranking, and now she's in this position, final she's in the finals, down a set and a break. Most players would just probably lose it. Having all of this in their mind, all of this energy and thoughts and internal voice coming through. But what does she do? You remember what she did?
I do remember, and just to clarify for people who I'm sure most people have heard of Serena, and most people like may even like know about how tennis works and how it's scored. But in women's tennis, 2 sets wins a match. So for Serena to be down a set and then also to be down a break, that meant she was trailing in that second set
Mhm.
and therefore in danger of losing, right?
Yep.
And what Serena does is what champions do. She reset. And really there's the whole process of mindset reset, of being able to take the mind and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to conquer over whatever may be ailing. Remember, she had physical ailments, and many times athletes playing at these high levels, they continue to play even when they are injured anyway. I remember
Mhm.
when, I was playing football and they always used to say, the best day of the season is the first day, because after that, you're going to be hurting the rest of the season.
Yeah.
So there's this thing where physically she may have had things that she had not even been able to like overcome yet to get to that peak level of athletic performance that she would normally expect of herself. But in all sports, as well as in business, the
Mhm.
mind is really the driver.
Mhm.
It is the thing that makes the biggest difference. And so if you can actually do a mindset reset, which is what she did in that case, and in her master class, she talks a lot about how in tennis, you have to completely clear your mind after every single point, whether
Mhm.
you just hit an ace, which is a winner, right?
Mhm.
Or you double faulted, which is obviously a loser, right? I mean, whether you win or lose, so no matter what the outcome is, you need to reset so that you can start fresh, full of energy and ready to attack in tennis that next point, or in business that next project or issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And for her specifically, as we understand her story, is that this is exactly how she approaches business. And Serena, on and off the court, wildly successful. So she's also a very, very successful business individual and owns multiple businesses, very diversified as far as how she approaches her business strategies. When she first started, a natural pathway for her to open a business was to go into fashion. She's also a self-professed kind of a fashion junkie guru, uh, study of the fashion industry, and she launched a line that was really, I mean, it was a first attempt, and unfortunately for her, it really struggled. And for Serena and having this championship winning mindset, she wasn't going to just let it be or close down the business and be like, oh, well, that didn't work out. She took
Mhm.
the time to reset, her thinking around this and kind of, what am I missing? And pulled her team together so that they could further analyze and understand more about the business, the industry, the markets, the customers. And from that, we're able to design a strategy to come back even stronger and with a broader appeal too. So one thing she has become savvy about is being very inclusive with her approach to business. And so she came back with the company rebranded as S by Serena. Um, and a great brand strategy, and that one took off. And one thing that Serena is quoted as saying is she says, "There's no day that goes by that I feel like losing." And if you break that down and take that with you into how you approach every single day, and it's not just a moment in the day, you wake up and maybe you think, "Oh, this is not a day I'm feel like I'm going to be losing." Or I'm willing to lose, that just carries through every single moment in the day. So anytime adversity shows up or that speed bump in the road or whatever it is, thinking like Serena, there's no day that I feel like losing. There's no moment. So even though the business that first launched wasn't successful, there's an opportunity to make it successful. Because remember,
Mhm.
somebody launched the pet rock and it was successful.
Mhm.
So there's an opportunity to pivot and figure out how to make this thing work.
That is true. And I mean, here's really the goal behind the whole thing is that Serena has invested in like over 60 different companies since she first set out with that fashion brand. And
I
she's also made it part of her mission to make sure that though that she's investing in people who have to go through some of the same struggles she does. So 54% of her investments have been with women, 47% have been with Black founders.
mm,
And by doing that, she's creating opportunities for underrepresented uh, entrepreneurs because she knows what it's like to be counted out.
mhm. Yeah, that's that's so true. Um, I think a little bit about, like, at the peak of my marathoning and, um, it's interesting when you're on a course and how it can be really supportive, especially with like the fans or the people that show up, not necessarily fans, but they're there to provide encouragement and everything. And typically there's really great conversation going on during the course. And you're always encountering different runners along the way and having great conversation.
Mhm.
Um, but every once in a while, there's been races I've been in that individuals take it as not about a race that's about being personally competitive, because typically running, you're out to do your best, you're out to do a PR, which is a personal record, and there are individuals that look at others as the competition, and I look at it that way too. Others that are on the course are competition, but it's because I want to move faster, so I want to get ahead of that person, so I use it as motivation. Others look at it as being maybe more of an aggressive approach. So there was one race in particular when I was coming in to the finish line, and there were like barrels set up with guidelines and flags bringing you into the finish. And this runner came up alongside me, and it was clear that this individual didn't want me to finish ahead of them. And which is just odd, right? Because again, we're not here to win a gold medal. You're here to do your personal best. And this individual shoved me into the barrels, and that was just crazy. It was
Yeah.
like I've never experienced anything like that before. But in that moment, being it's a setback, and so like, how do you adjust from it? And it's like I can't control what that person did, but I need to finish this race, so I need to get back into this thing. So as we think about, the mindset and being able to pause and reflect and like, how do I how do I stay out of my head, but in my head, right? I don't want the negativity that's absorbing in my head, but I really want to bring forward positive thinking and different ways to think about how do I approach this. So
Hmm.
how do we really apply this? How should people think about moving forward?
Well, we coined something called the Champions Reset. I mentioned it at the beginning of this little segment.
Yeah.
And it's not just for elite athletes like Serena Williams, or what I remember more recently is in the past Summer Olympics when Simone Biles like overcame all her mental health challenges and she came back and won 3 gold medals. I mean, that was really impressive, and everyone was super encouraged by what Simone was doing.
Mhm.
So similarly, when you face a setback, you get an opportunity to recalibrate and come back from it.
Yeah.
So there's three things you can do. The first is you need to pause and take a time out. So we say, take 60 seconds to breathe and clear your mind. If you do any meditation, if you do any mindfulness work, anything like that, you can do that in a very short period of time. It can help you recenter and refocus. So you're bringing yourself back to the groundedness that allows you to think clearly. I think we talked about this in the last episode as well. So if you want to go back and listen to the last episode, we also brought it up as well. And then, secondly, ask yourself, now that you're relaxed and back in your zone, what's the very next play?
Mhm.
There's somebody who like I have watched a lot. He writes, and I'm gonna space the name out right now. But he talks about getting things done, and one of the things he talks about is when we create plans for ourselves, is sometimes we don't know all the steps in a plan,
Mhm.
but we usually know the very next step. We can always figure out what's next. What do we need to do next to move ourselves in that direction? So when you get into a setback, when you're able to like calm yourself and then say, what's the next play? What's the next thing I should be doing? And then the third part clearly would be is to execute that, right? And to execute it without actually thinking about the past. Because remember, the past is in the past. You can't change it now. So what you have the ability to do is shape the future. And that
Mhm.
is how elite athletes go through that process of resetting every single
Mhm.
time. I think about people who shoot free throws on the free throw line, and how they tend to have a routine that they go through so that
Mhm.
they actually calm themselves. A lot of them take the deep breath, right? Then they focus, and then they look. There's an old school guy, John Stockton, who used to have it like, I know it was Jeff Hornacek. Sorry, Jeff Hornacek. You'd have to look it up. He had like a
Utah Jazz.
yeah,
Yeah.
he had a very peculiar process, but every single time it helped him reset. So, and he was one of the best free throw shooters in the NBA. So, anyway,
Mhm.
those are the 3 steps.
Mhm. Okay, yeah. Um, good. Those are good. They're simple, they're clear, they're actionable. So again, emphasizing step number 3, you got to take action. You got to move it into execution. And what's powerful about this is that it's not about ignoring the mistake. Mistakes are going to happen. It's just life, right? And we have to be comfortable with the fact that mistakes are going to happen. However, it's not about letting it define how we choose to take the next move or the
Mhm.
next move or the next move. So it is about anchoring into a new mindset that helps allow us to acknowledge, yeah, this mistake happened. And so now that that's part of the reality, what's the next step to move forward?
Mhm. Absolutely. And you hear a lot of coaches say, don't allow this loss to cost you the next game, also, right?
Mhm.
If you dwell on it.
Yeah.
So, in addition to like being able to have that mindset reset, there's also the whole Brikkelle you were talking about taking action. And part of taking action is this like hustle mentality. And in sports, you see players diving across the floor to get a loose ball or whatever it might be, diving out of bounds, whatever they have to do in order to make that play happen. And there
Mhm.
is a guy we want to talk about, Mark Cuban. Might see him on Shark Tank, right? But a lot of people don't know much about his origin story, and so we thought we'd take a step back and have you, and talk a little bit about it.
Yeah. So Mark Cuban, quite a character, very vocal, and very outspoken individual. But who talk about relentless? He's a powerhouse and really somebody to look into and study if that's a space that you yourself might want to improve. But well before his notoriety on Shark Tank and before he became the owner of the Dallas Mavericks basketball team, Mark started life in Pittsburgh, and as a kid, very young, he already had this entrepreneurial mindset. Like, I need to start a business, I need to do something. So he started doing door-to-door sales of garbage bags, magazines, and just some other kind of random things. But he started making money. And then when he went off to college, went to University of Indiana, and he started bartending. And for a short period of time, he actually owned a bar. And that's where he got to meet a lot of different people and hear their story and start to glean from that, their stories. One of his good friends convinced him to move to Dallas after he graduated. And so he did, and was sharing a house with several other guys and sleeping on a couch. But during his time there, he founded a company called Micro Solutions. And he built this company up enough to the point that CompuServe it caught their attention, and CompuServe ended up buying the business from Cuban for $6 million. Then he went on to develop broadcast.com. And this was a streaming service for audio and video that was conducted over the internet. Well, that built up again a lot of attention that Yahoo wanted to purchase it. And Cuban was able to sell broadcast.com to Yahoo. It was an interesting transaction, actually, because it was all Yahoo stock that Cuban got, but he got $5.7 billion in Yahoo stock.
Wow.
He was quick to sell the stock, and he was looking at, how do I best leverage this? And so then he sold, he bought the Mavericks. He went on to um, go on to Shark Tank, and really started to share some of his knowledge. And if any of you do watch Shark Tank, you know what I'm talking about, that he's an outspoken person. He's a very kind individual. He treats the people that are there to give their presentation on their product or service with great kindness, but he is not shy to call out his colleagues that are the other sharks on the show. So yeah, Mark's got a really a cool story, and just in a way how he's reinvented himself with, you know, early on, just having this appeal to, I want to own a business, I want to make money, and just figuring out how to start doing that. And then, coming up with business ideas, launching business ideas, selling them. And it's like, well, I just sold this business. Now what? Well, he goes and finds something else to do and just continues to have this relentless pursuit of achievement.
Yeah, and here's where the sports part comes in, though. I mean, yes, he bought the Dallas Mavericks, but even before that, he credits like NBA players for teaching him real business strategy. I mean, he studied how Magic Johnson built his brand, loyal basketball. Excuse me, how Magic Johnson kind of built his brand beyond basketball, and then how players negotiated contracts. Their agents worked with them on things. How teams built fan loyalty. Those are all things he learned from being around athletes and following the game and playing. He loves playing basketball too, by the way. So
Yeah. So, this wasn't left in theory, like read it in a book and theorize about it, but actually he applied the lessons directly. And when he had launched broadcast.com, he used the same fan engagement strategies that he saw in sports to build an audience. And through this, it built up, like I mentioned before, this massive following and engagement to the point that Yahoo, I don't know where Yahoo measures today as far as competitiveness or market share or anything like that. But Yahoo was the thing back in this day, right? And so for Yahoo to pay attention and be like, you know what, we want this, that's a pretty big deal. And then not only that, for it to be a $5.7 billion acquisition, it's just phenomenal.
mm-hmm. It is. And even as Mavericks owner, he continued to do things like revolutionizing the fan experience. He for instance lowered ticket prices and added free snacks. He made games more accessible for the common fan because he understood, like in sports as well as in business,
Mhm.
customer loyalty is everything. I mean, it means the world. And so, that ability to build that that customer loyalty was really important to his success.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's your hustle challenge this week. So we got three things for you. One is to identify somebody outside of your own industry who's absolutely crushing it. And again, study this individual to understand what's their background, what's their history, what was their pathway to get to where they are, what type of adversities have they encountered, how have they overcome those things, what is their mindset, how do they take care of themselves. I think about a pretty large organization years ago that I worked at, and at that time the CEO, um, to be a CEO at these really large organizations, there really isn't time off or downtime. There really isn't personal time so much. But this individual was really diligent about self care, and maybe did it in an interesting way because made it very public. And so every morning started with, um, what do I want to say? Not necessarily prayer, but prayer could be, if that's what you like to do, but meditation, and then went out running. So this individual is an avid runner, but utilized an app that anybody in the company or or honestly anybody could follow what he did. So, what was his amount of time in meditation? And then what was his run like? What was the course that he ran on? Because it mapped out like the not necessarily street level, but where he went, the amount of time he was running, how fast he ran, blah blah blah. So he made all of this very public, but the thing that he wanted to communicate by doing this is that you've got to take care of yourself. And sometimes as leaders, that can be something that gets lost in all of the excitement and activity of things that are going on. So there's just one example to share. Like, as you're identifying this person outside of your industry, really study them, really understand how do they approach their day to day, and what have they done to get to the level that maybe you're looking to glean from. And then, so that whole piece is about studying their playbook. If we bring back the sports analogy, what are the things that they're stacking in their playbook? What are the constants? What are the things that they have as far as the what ifs that should show up? How do they prime their own mindset? How do they encourage and shape this within their leadership team to ensure that the business has stability? What are they doing to pay attention to the customer segments and make sure that they're staying informed about how do we continue to keep customers engaged in where we're going with the company, or do we need to move where we're going with the company because the markets are indicating something different for us? And then adapt one strategy in your business that you can shape differently. And you already know what this is because it's the thing in the business that just isn't going well. So don't mess with the things that are going well. Leave those alone. But this is your opportunity to fine tune something that you need some more attention.
Hmm. Very good. And I mean, this is how innovation happens, right? By cross-pollinating ideas from different worlds. And it's fascinating when you see people bring things from either one industry or a different area altogether, and they bring it into um, their business because it can
Mhm.
really help it thrive.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So let's go into our third individual that we wanted to showcase here, and that's Indra Nooyi. And we've talked about her before. Indra ended up being the CEO of PepsiCo from 2006 to 2019. So that tells you somebody who's really good. If they can hang on at that top seat in a major corporation, major global corporation at that. But to understand Indra, we have to go back to her childhood. And she grew up in India. She grew up in an area of India that at that time when she was a child, that females were expected to behave in certain ways, and it was a rather conservative area in India. Indra just had a different thought about what her pathway would look like. She was a little bit rebellious. She joined an all girls cricket team, and she also was part of an all girl band, and she was a guitarist for the all girl band. So these were things that just really kind of stood out at that time, that era, but also just how she chose to show up and put herself out there. But it was really a little bit attributed to her time as a cricket player about really learning strategy and kind of in an intense way, maybe, but in a way that really started to shape and form how cricket provided insights to her that she was able to carry through her ascension into just really great leadership positions.
Yeah, and I wish I had paid more attention to cricket when I was younger because my dad is from or was from Jamaica and played cricket before, and the reason why when he moved to the United States, he used to say, baseball was the easiest thing for him to relate to is because there are some similarities between cricket and baseball, as for instance, like they call like scoring as runs, right? And they hit the ball. However, I don't know very many baseball games that last 5 days, and certain types of cricket matches can last up to 5 days.
Mhm.
I mean, 5 full days. So, I mean, if you think about Indra and playing cricket, and the one thing that happens is that it's a long game. So you're gonna have to be patient, and you also have to have long-term thinking in order to be successful in this game. Strategy is immensely important, and
Mhm.
you can't worry about like one hit.
Mhm.
You have to think about the whole game, and that's part of what got her gave her the ability to last at PepsiCo as long as she did.
Mhm. Yeah, and, during that pretty extensive period of time that she was at PepsiCo, there was a point in time that she made a controversial decision to pivot, and the pivot was to move away from sugary drinks, and she did this years before the market shifted. So if you can put yourself in the position as a board member, a shareholder member, leadership team, employees, like, this is what we do. We fill the world with sugary drinks. Like, this is what we are known for. And we also are in neck and neck competition with another pretty sizable organization that also has dominance in maybe markets that we want to occupy or take over. But anyway, let's say it was just neck and neck, this race. And so to make this decision to pivot, having done the right research and really understanding what this impact would bring, but then to get the belief, the buy-in, the followership from the employees, the leadership team, from the board of directors, from shareholders to be like, okay, we're all in, but we're going to do this now. Wow, nobody else is even talking about it or considering it.
Hmm.
Think about the risk of potentially losing existing customers. I mean, there's a lot on the line to do this, and critics were calling her crazy, rightfully so. When you think about it, it's a radically crazy move to make. But what she was doing, she was playing the long game. She already saw where this was going. She knew where the industry would eventually evolve to. She just wanted to be the first one to get there. So this is where she brought in her conditioning of playing cricket, right? It wasn't this one move, it wasn't this one hit, it wasn't this one play, it wasn't this one day. It was that elongated period of time that she was playing in.
Hmm. Absolutely. And then here's really the brilliant part. So while like other competitors like were pumping out things, there was new Coke and Coke with lime and so on and so forth, just
Mhm.
continuing to pump things into the market like that. Pepsi was actually putting out healthier options like bubbly and life water, and so they got ahead of the game doing those things, and so their stock eventually doubled during her tenure,
Mhm.
because as the trend line started to shift and people were looking for healthier options,
Yeah.
Pepsi had already was there
Yep.
with the options.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's rough for those that were either fast followers or wait and see, and then eventually jumped into, that body of ocean and decided that they wanted to compete too because, it's hard when you've got brand loyalty or that you start serving a market before competition does, and for, competition to try and start taking away that market share. I mean, she made a brilliant move and made it very challenging to start sealing out the competition and keeping a really healthy pipeline filled for PepsiCo. Um, she also implemented what were called corporate huddles. And so she would bring executives together to debate, just like cricket teammates. Apparently, they're debating throughout the whole match of the 5 days, and it wasn't about hierarchy. It was about bringing these big minds from the organization together, and it was about generating the best ideas to make sure that PepsiCo could win. And that's very true, again, for all of you, that what are you doing to create and shape these opportunities to bring the minds together and being inclusive with this, because we want to hear from a variety of perspectives within the company to
Hmm.
generate ideas. And no idea is a bad idea. It just helps inform us about what can we move towards and what do we not want to move towards. And everything helps refine that decisioning. So looking at how you can make that happen. And again, if you are a solopreneur and you don't have employees yet, operate as if you do. Speak things out into existence. And so if that means that you're bringing together a small committee of trusted people who can be advisors to you, who really care about you and your business's success, use those individuals to be your corporate huddle.
Hmm. Yeah, you need people on your team no matter what, right? So whether you have actual employees or whether you are getting contractors or advisors or board members, whatever you might have, you want to bring them in and help get ideas and concepts from them so that you can build a better idea. It takes diversity of thought in order to generate great ideas. So here's your long game exercise, right? We want you to first of all project your industry out for the next 5 years. You know, if you struggle with that, if you say, it's really hard for me to see beyond the next 6 months or something like that, I don't know. Go grab Chat GPT and ask Chat. See what Chat says, or just go to something I tell some of the entrepreneurs I work with. Go to the library. You ever notice librarians, if you come in and you ask them a question, they get all geeky and they get excited and
Mhm.
they will go and spend like an hour with you, like researching and finding all this information about your industry. So don't allow yourself to say, hey, I don't know what's happening in the industry, but instead challenge yourself to go find people who might know. Go interview people who are industry leaders. Whatever you might need to do, go find people who can talk to you about what's happening or projected to happen in your industry. And
Mhm.
and find out both the things that are predicted to be good stuff as
Yeah.
well as stuff that might be, negatively impacting the industry as well.
Mhm.
Both threats and opportunities as far as that goes. Once
Mhm.
you know that, then identify the second step is to identify 3 trends that you believe will matter the most, that you are willing to commit to within your business. And then thirdly, you want to take those and start building, imagine action, right? Start building the capabilities in those areas right now.
Mhm.
So a lot like how Pepsi saw forward and they started building capability around healthy drinks, you want to build capabilities as well so that you can be prepared for the opportunity that will arise in your industry.
Mhm. Absolutely. And when I think about that, CEOs that I work with and have worked with, is that there's this saying about you have to be able to see around corners, or actually you have to see through them. And as a CEO, you don't have the luxury to say we didn't know, didn't anticipate that. It's your
Mhm.
job. It's your job. You need to look into that. And so whether you don't know or you think you know, you need to validate. Trust, but validate. Okay? And so even if you're going to the library to do some researching, I would even do the researching to just validate, are my assumptions accurate? Or has the ball moved? Has the target moved? And what do I need to be informed about? And, in sports, there's so many analogies around this about, we have to stay ahead of the curve. We have to see around the corners that typically in a sport that includes a ball or a puck, that you are positioning a pass or a throw to where you want to lead your teammate, where the game needs to progress to. It's typically not going directly to the individual because that's not advancing the game as effectively. And also, it's pretty easy for defense to intercept and to know exactly what you're going to do. So this keeps defense on their toes.
Mhm.
So this is the thing you got to think about with your business is that where's the industry going? Where are the customers going? Where do they want us to be? And how can we get there quickly? So how do I get the ball passed to the place that we need to go rather than going through a route that drives inefficiency and ineffectiveness?
Yes, absolutely. It's really important to be able to stay ahead of that curve, as you were saying. Um, so with those three examples, that we've talked about, your mindset.
Mhm.
We've talked about the hustle mentality, and or the actions around hustle, even, and then we talked about the strategic component. But with all elite athletes and with all athletes in general, there's this training piece, right? So you need to go into the gym and build that mental muscle.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about how you actually develop the championship traits for yourself and
Mhm.
for your team.
Mhm. Yeah. So, first of all, our guidance to all of you is resilience and constantly working on building up your resilience. And just like athletes, this is about doing drills, about helping prepare for pressure types of situations. And sometimes it's not just theoretical, right? Like that we read about something and like, well, this is how I would handle it, but actually getting yourself into situations so that you can work on developing your resilience. And you stay in business long enough, it could be one day, it could be a week, it could be a year. You're going to have adversity come your way. You're going to have the opportunity to practice in real time these pressure situations. And so, whatever it takes to get into how am I going to operate while performing under pressure, under stress, and identifying what does it take for you to have the resiliency to see it through, to still show up, to be present in the moment, right? Stay clear thinking, have a good mindset, stay relentless about how you're pursuing it, but have strategy built into this so that
Mhm.
you're moving forward, you're mitigating the stress, which causes individuals and leaders to make sometimes not great decisions or short term thinking decisions because we're letting the stress override us. So, the first one is really focusing on building resilience.
So next time you're about to have a high stakes meeting, or even just any meeting. Actually, I was at a networking meeting earlier today, and the thing I've learned is that you have to prepare for going even into networking meetings. any type of any type of work that you're about to do, prepare for it 3 times more than usually. I mean, in other words, over prepare. Athletes continue to train for key or critical situations in big games,
Mhm.
and that's what makes a big difference between success and failure. I think about how many last second shots we see made in the NCAA basketball tournaments. And that didn't happen because somebody just got lucky and threw the ball up in the air. No, it
Mhm.
happened because I've seen like videos and things of players like at the end of a practice, players will line up at half court. We used to do it for the high school team. You line up at half court and they all take half court shots.
Mhm.
So they get in the habit of launching the ball and trying to make it. And when somebody makes it, they all celebrate. So over prepare yourself for those big moments. That's
Mhm.
that's one of the things that we would challenge you with.
Yeah, the over prepare piece. So, I was on a call with one of our real estate investing communities, and an individual was presenting an investment opportunity, and there was a number of questions coming in for this individual, many that they were able to respond to. But then there was also some that it was, oh, let me jot that down. I'll look into that. I'll get back to you. You shouldn't be that way. You, you should have it so buttoned up, unless it's some just wild, unknown type of question that might come your way, that you've done the due diligence, you've done the research, you know it inside and out, and even just use others as a sounding board. What else is missing? What gaps exist here? What else should we know? Where else do we need to gather more information? So it's not always incumbent upon you to be the sole bearer of going in and pulling all of this information together. You have a community of people, and even if you're a business of one, you've got a community of people. Tap into them. Secondly, is strategic thinking. And so, great athletes study game film. And guess what? So does Indra Nooyi. Again, Indra, she's fascinating to me. She likes the Chicago Bulls, and she studies replays of their championship games so that she can identify the strategy in the concepts that they use for their teamwork, and how that team comes together, how they're fluid, and how they overcome situations that are on the court that might be not anticipated. Or how do they stay true to who they are as a team, as individual players, and rely on one another? So even CEO of PepsiCo studied game film to really hone in on strategic thinking. And as leaders, we should be doing the same. We should be looking at case studies. Harvard business case studies are really great ones, but there's many others out there that you can look into. Analyze the competition. Again, you've got to know the competition inside and out so that you are making the best decisions for your company to stay relevant, stay competitive. And then also constant learning, have multiple sources of ways that you are gathering information and insights.
Okay. As you were saying that, I was kind of thinking that maybe the 2025 version of the Chicago Bulls should actually get Indra to come and actually show them the plays of the championship Bulls from several years ago, because they aren't very good this year.
Maybe
Anyway,
she will. Maybe she will.
anyway, here. So a tip for you is to keep a playbook journal, like where you can document all your winning strategies that you observe. There are CEOs, and I've actually done this myself too. It's like you just carry around a journal and you jot down things, interesting things that come up, ideas, thoughts, those. And it doesn't matter whether it's business, sports, or even politics, I guess. Not so sure I want to follow politics, like take tips from them right now. But anyway, you get what I mean.
You were heard. So the final one we want to leave with you is about teamwork. And I think every single championship team that you study, you see that that team is gelled together. They have each other's backs. They're picking each other up, they're praising one another, they're encouraging one another. There's not finger pointing, there's not blaming. That's not happening. That's what doesn't make a championship team. So look at how you're building your own company culture and creating a championship team where everyone has each other's backs and finding ways to praise team members, to acknowledge their contribution and give that recognition, but do it in a way that is respectful for that individual. Some people, they couldn't have enough public praise. You could put it like on a marquee, on a billboard, in the newspapers, and it just wouldn't be enough. There's other people that maybe they just want a note, an email, or just a quiet one-on-one in-person conversation and get that recognition and praise. So know your people before you go out and think you're doing a really good thing, because we want this to feel really good to the person receiving it too. Um, and then also create spaces to encourage and invite this collaboration of others to share in on how do we take care of each other? How are we communicating? How are we staying connected? How are we generating and sharing ideas and building creativity and innovation and having ways that we are now coming together, that we have each other's backs. We feel like a united team. This feels like a place that I want to be a part of and I want to thrive in. And look at that. I am thriving because I've got this community of other people who aren't willing to let me fail.
So now the ball's in your court. And for this closing challenge, we want you to step up to the plate and pick one sports metaphor. Get that? That resonates with your leadership style. One I like is you miss every shot you don't take. Or if I reframe it in a more positive way, I could say, you have to take the shot in order to make the shot.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So pick that sports metaphor, use that to help you identify one area that you want to strengthen this week. And then share your insights with us on Instagram at _Trippin_Thompsons or in the comments of this YouTube video.
Perfect. We're excited to hear from all of you. And now remember that every champion was once a beginner that refused to give up. Now get out there and crush it. Can't wait to see you next time. Thanks for joining today.
Shoot your best shot.